Okay.
Yep, perfect.
Okay. So I'm set. So hi everyone, thank you for making time to join today's session. So today we'll do a deep dive on the data services. And before we even start, probably I'll just do a quick recap on the last week session. So last week's session we did mainly around advanced data manipulation, whereby we walked through the team on how you can invoke SQL codes, and how you can create the connection in SQL, how you can execute the SQL. Then we also did a bit around Python, how you can invoke a Python, how you can just get the Python object and scripts, etc. And we had some really practical sessions in terms of hands-on experience. So in the event you did miss out on any of those sessions, we have the recordings available, so you can be able to refer to them and just get acquainted to where we reached. So like I mentioned, today we'll do a deep dive on data services, and what a better place to start by introducing the team today that we have. So we have Rohit. Rohit is the regional community supporting APAC. Maybe Rohit, you can just say hi to the team.
Yeah, hi, hello everyone. Nice to be here. I'm Rohit. I manage, as Jonathan just mentioned, the community in APAC. I'm based out of Bangalore, India. So really nice to be in this session. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for making time to join us today. So today, unfortunately, Christina is away, but she did send her regards. So the main agenda for today's session, like I mentioned, we'll do a deep dive on data services, and just that mainly by just showing you how you can be able to really utilize it in real life scenarios. Then after that, we'll now dive deeper into just how can you get started, how can you create those entities, how can you create the fields. Then we'll dive deeper as well using data services in UiPath. How are you able to do the queries? How can you be able to create multiple records using the same? Then if you have questions as you proceed, I'll be able to answer as you proceed. So like I mentioned, let me just do a quick so I've created an application. So if you can see, this is an app I've created using a UiPath app. And majority of companies or in different scenarios, you'll be finding that you're collecting a lot of data from the customers or from your internal systems, and you pass them to a different backend database. So what we have now with UiPath, it gives you the capability and the ability not only to create the application, but also to store and manage that particular data. So in the event using these four main fields, let's just create Django. Maybe the department will change and stuff ID. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5. So immediately you normally submit this data, it goes and queues backend somewhere. So today we are just going to explore more around where does that data go? Are you able to call it out? Are you able to pull it? And just to show you the same. So assuming I was to validate, let's say I'm validating that particular stuff, just to know if he or she belongs to that company. If I was to pass that exact staff ID number and validate, you can see it's populating those particular fields that you're pulling. So using data services, you're able to do both connections. That is, you're able to push data to a data service, or you're able to pull data to a data service. So this can go on and on and on and on. So let me just show you a bit on the back end, then you can dive deeper. So like I mentioned, I've created this using UiPath apps. And for each field that you collect information, I'm storing all that information in a variable. So for example, staff name, I'm storing that using a staff name variable. We'll do a detailed session on UiPath apps in the coming session, but just to give some heads up. So you're storing all that here. So if someone clicks submit, what you're doing backend, we are pushing all that data to, as you can see, I've been able to create a connection. So we're pushing all that data to our entity, so on our data service called the African Cities 2. And all the data that we populate from the fields, we're able to push backend. We'll do a bit back on the same. Same case, if someone is querying, like what you did, if someone is trying to validate if this particular person belongs to that company, if someone clicks on validate, same case, we are using a lookup function, which will do a detailed session examination apps. Using a lookup function, we're just going to our data services, trying to validate the variables or the fields that particular person passed. And if they are successful, we are pulling back the response from the data service. So in this case, I was pulling the department as an example. Okay, so that's what a bit on the background. Let's now do a detail around the data services. So how do you get started with data service? So once you log into your cloud, I know now we are conversant with our cloud platforms. Once you log into your cloud platform and you scroll, you'll be able to see data services. In some instances, there are some cases whereby you might have not enabled data service. So I'll just do another login in a different account. So this is my other account. So in the event you have not enabled data service, you can just go to your admin. If you go to your admin, click on default, then go to services, manage service for these tenants. This is my tenant. Then here I'll be able to see all the different services that are available in my organization. This is my organization. So here you'll be able to see data service. So you can just click on the three dots and click launch. So launch, you'll be able to install if you've not installed. So mine is already installed. That's the reason is that. So once you do that, you'll be able to have data service on your left navigation bar. So let me just go back to this one. So once you create, let's see what you did. So what is data service? So like I mentioned, data service gives you an ability to not only store data, but also you are able to retrieve that data. It's secure. We will discuss a bit around the security. It's secure, meaning that you are able to limit the accessibility to the different users that you have already configured in your system, so it cannot be accessed elsewhere. So in this case, if you want to create a new, here we normally call it entity. You can look at entity as a table. So if you just click create new entity, you can give it a name. So in this case, I'll just say just demo. You can give it a name. You can add a description if need be. Then you can save. So what you have done, you have created a table or an entity. In this case, just demo. So this is the one that I've created. You just open it. So once you create yours, it normally comes with predefined fields. So these are the different fields. So these are a unique ID created by. It supports you in terms of audit trail, etc. You can be able to see when an item has been created, when was it last updated, etc. So these are the common fields that it comes with. You can create your own fields. So in this case, just say start name. You can decide if it's a required field or if it's a unique value. If you select unique values only, it means that in the event you have a name or a variable that is exactly similar, it will refuse to populate, it will refuse to add simply because it's not a unique. So in this case, I'll just say save. You can create multiple fields depending on how many you have. Let me just add another one. You can select the different types. So you have Boolean, you have numbers, you have choices, you have a file. So in the event you want to store records, it can be an Excel attachment that you want to as well attach. You can be able to use the same. You can create relationships if you have multiple tables. But in this case, because it's an email, I'll just say it's a text. In the same case, if it's required or not, you can be able to select. So there are some additional fields. Here's the maximum length. You can increase or decrease. So in this case, it's 200. You can increase it to, let's say, 2,000, depending on the sale. You can do to add description per field. In this case, I'll just leave it blank. You continue and save. So what we have is that you have created the different fields in my entity or in my data table called test demo. And in it, I can be able to create the different data. I can be able to pass the data. So if I click data, then you can click create new field. So you'll be able to see, so if you click add data, you'll be able to see the different fields you have created, the staff name, as well as the email. So you can be able to pass values. Let's say staff name, email, use my email, and save it. So what you'll see is that, like I mentioned, it will generate a unique reference for that particular person. Those are the details that you pass, the name, the email, who created. So you're able to do an audit trail. When was it created? And if it was updated, when was it updated? So you can find scenarios whereby a field was created, but through a bot or through human, someone updated the field. So you are able to clearly track the same. If you have multiple data, you can import all that data. So it has to be CSV. So it must be CSV, and you have to align the fields. So in this case, if I wanted to do a lot, I'll just click import and import. So I'll go to an entity that I've already added some fields, so you can see how it looks. So in this entity, and this is the Excel that hopefully you can see the Excel. So this is the Excel, it has the different stuff ID, it has the names, it has the emails, it has the departments, and I've pulled all this data to our entity. So this is the entity you can be able to see. So in this case, we did not enable unique fields. The reason you can see we have under staff ID, you have demo 1, demo 01, demo 01, etc. So this is just a bit on how you can create data service, on how you can create your own entity. So once we have this, the question is how are we able to sync from data service cloud back to your studio? So if you can just open studio and just create a new one. So set this one. Yes. It will open studio. It will open your studio. You can just go to main. So what we want to do in this studio, we want to connect our entity to studio so that you can be able to do multiple analysis, or you can do multiple configuration. So to do that, I need to go to manage entities. Is an easy option. So if you click manage entity, you'll be able to see all the different entities that you have within cloud version. So in this case, I have several multiple, but I want to sync. So I'll just deselect all of them. I select the ones I want to sync. So I can select this one because I already have the data. It will show you the different fields that are there. So in this case, we have 9 fields and we have 89 records in this particular one. There's one we have created right now, the test demo. You can see it has 7 fields. This is inclusive of the additional self-generated fields with 1 record in it. So if you want, you can just click save. So what happens is that the beauty with the new version of Studio is that it's quickly able to identify which package you need to install. So that's the reason we never went directly to package. So you can see that for me to be able to utilize the data service, I need to install UiPath data service. And it gives me that ability. So if I could just click on it, it gives me that specific activity that I need to install. So in this case, I can just click install and save. Takes us through. So that's it. So it has already installed the activities and I'm able to utilize. So to validate the same, if you go to projects and if you go to entities, you're able to see the different entities that you've created. So in this case, I have 2 entities. I have the African Series 2 and I have the test demos in the one we just created. So what happens is that it also pulls all the users in that specific entity. So if you have the different users, all of them are full when you pull the entity. So in this case, you can be able to see different system users as well as they pull. Okay. So for you to proceed, you just need to double check if you have the activities as well. If you go to data service, you can see it's already installed. So in data service, you have three main activities or three main major features you can consider looking at. So you have the file feature. So in file feature here, it talks more around creating a file, updating an existing file, deleting a particular file. If you look at entity record, this looks specifically at updating a single record in a transaction, updating that record, querying that particular record, deleting that record, or creating a new record. If you're looking at batch, this is purely around if you have a multiple data records and you just want to upload all of them at once, you can create a batch to do the same. And probably just to mention is that using data service, I do note that they give you around 5 GB in terms of the pull and push. For the number of APIs call you can do within a day is around 10,000 per data service unit. So remember, the licensing model is at data service, so you can be able to do 10,000 API calls. And I'll be able to take you through in depth on what does that mean when you're doing your different entity or batch query. So you can just go back to this one that I've already created for save on time. Okay. You just go back to data service. Services. Just so for data services, like I mentioned, we'll start mainly first with the entity record, one by one record. What does that mean? Then you can do a batch. And hopefully, if you have time, you can just delve deeper into the finance. So in the first example, we can try is to update the entire entity. Remember the entity that I presented, this is the entity, these are the different data sets. How are we able to update? Just delete all of them. This now is it has zero records. We still have signal. Okay, so my entity or my data table African series 2 is completely blank. And I have this particular data in my data table called employee data. Let me just copy this one. So I've already done this entire example. You can play around it from there. So I've already done the entire example. So we want to push all this particular information to our data table using Studio. So how do you do that? Okay, so the first thing first, I've pulled in read workbook. I do not by now we are familiar with the same. So I just want to read the workbook. Read range, so I pulled it in. So this is it. I passed where that particular Excel is located. So this is where the Excel is located and which sheet. So in this case, you can see the sheet is called solutions. So I pass it there. Then I save that output, the data table as DT and employee as my data table. So once we do that, the next bit is that going back to our data service entity, I wanted to create a new entity. So this is create an entity. So when you pull it, the beauty is that now what they have been able to do, UiPath have been able to do in the new version is that you are able to quickly see the different entities that you have pulled. So in this case, I've only pulled in the African series. If I needed to add a new series, you can just go to manage entities. You can see this is the series that I have, and we can refresh. They can be able to see the new different series like this one, the one you recently created, and just add it. Let's move. Okay. So when you go to the search, you'll be able to see the two different series. So in this case, I'll just click African series, the one you clicked, you remove the entire records. So it gives you two options. So you have then an option to just add it using a variable as well, or you can switch to use a record view. So I'll just switch and using a record view. So in this record view, you can see to create the record of the selected sheet, this must match the entity. So to do this, I'll just create a variable from K and call it input. Record. So if you go to the variables, this one you can see the variable type is African series 2. This is the data service that we have. You can see it has been able to link this to. And what we need to do now that we have this, remember you cannot, using the data table, you cannot write directly to the create entity. So what we need to do is to use we need to look through that data table. So that's the reason we put for each data table. Data table. So pulling for each row in a data table. So I'm looping through this data table. So that our data table is called DTL. So here we pass the DTL. Then I'm saying the current row in this particular data table. I'll leave it as is, or you can say row. Then in the body, what we need to do is we need to initialize. Initialize meaning that for this input, we need to make sure that all the items that we retrieve, we initialize. Let me just do that one. So we pulled in an assign. Assign will help us to initialize. So what are we initializing? We're initializing this input record. So you just write new. Then you pass here, you pass your data table, African series 2. Okay, so this is just to initialize to be able to push that particular data there. So that's the assign that we pull. The next bit is that for all items in this workbook, we need to pass all of them. So to do that, we pull in multiple assign. Then the first thing is to pass this input record. Input dot, you'll be able to see all the different fields in your data service. So for example, you can see you have the department, you have the email address, you have the ID, the staff number, stuff like this. So you can just select that one. So what are you passing? So you're passing data from this data table row, which is DTN dot row. So one thing you also need to know is which particular, if I'm passing, in this case, you're passing the staff number. If you're passing the staff number, you need to know specifically just if you're passing the staff number, you need to know specifically which row it is. In this case, if you look at staff ID, the staff number is index 0, 1, 2, and 3. So this is index 0, this is index 1, 2, and 3. So in our case, let me just, if you can look at this one. So this one, you are passing the department.